Howdy, howdy, Sudevil here, and welcome to another testing video where we're going to look at Giant Slayers versus Chaos Warriors. We're also actually going to look at the other versions of the Slayers. I really wanted to do this test to take a look at the new Giant Slayers and to see what they're capable of. Everyone who plays the Dowie understands that really Slayers are quite vulnerable to other infantry units. And that has typically been the downfall. Now Slayers, just the regular Slayers are very good value against a lot of obviously large troops. Your Dragonback Slayers have been changed quite a bit in the last patch, getting a lot more melee defense, making them a lot more tankier, and we saw that in the test against Kolek and the test against the Goblin Archers. And the Giant Slayers we know kill very fast, but how would they do up against infantry like the Chaos Warrior? So I will go through a quick test of each of these, and then I'll go through the data in the spreadsheet to see whereabouts their value slots in, and to try and understand the differences between them in this matchup. Now Chaos Warriors are with great weapons are very common. If you're going to play the Dowie versus Chaos, you're almost always going to see some Chaos Warriors with great weapons. Now, understanding that the matchup between Slayers and Chaos Warriors, we know it's going to be bad, but understanding the differences between these three units might help you make a pick in one of your matchups, or at least understand the scale or the scope of that matchup and how bad it really is. So we'll go in and just do a quick test so we can show sort of how long it takes, and then we're going to go over the data and look at each battle that way. Now, for anyone who hasn't, for anyone who doesn't like the testing, I know there's lots of people who don't like the tedious bit of the testing and stuff. Go to the end of the video. I'll try and summarize the data at the end of the video. For those of you who like to, sort of look at the data, analyze it, understand it, and enjoy spreadsheet work and analysis and observation, the rest of the video is for you. So fast forward to the very end if you just want to see the summary, and stick here with me if you want to go through the details. So I do all my tests the same. I don't generally change the formations. I really want them to be repeatable. And I mean, I understand formations make a difference, but the repeatability is the important thing for me in the testing, so that you can easily repeat the exact testing that I do and get the very similar results, understanding that formations do make a difference, and I have done a video on formation testing. So we're just going to go take a look at what Slayers do up against Chaos Warriors. Now, I guess we can go in and get a quick cinematic, and then we'll fast forward it. I mean, I love my Dowie. Going in there, giant headbutts, it's fantastic to see them fight, but they are already losing quite badly, and I'm just going to fast forward this so we can get through it. And we are less than a minute. They are at half health and getting absolutely crushed, as you would expect. This is why you keep Slayers away from other infantry units. They can do okay against some, but really they are meant for large, and they're already down to 9 models, 58 minutes, and down to our last Dowie, and that is it. So we'll end that battle, and we'll go and look at the data and see exactly how much gold we're losing in that matchup. So when we look at the cost of Slayers are 900, the cost of Chaos Warriors, the great weapons, are 850. The battle, for anyone who hasn't seen this before, I take the start time of the battle where the units actually collided, the finish time of the battle, so I can get the overall time. Now, when you're doing this, I had to leave a little bit of health left on the Slayers. I know they died completely every time, but all the stats disappear on you, and it's hard to take them, so you got to leave a little bit of health left to do it like this. And then I look at the finishing hit points of the Slayers, the finishing hit points of the Chaos Warriors. Great weapons, I look at the damage per second each unit is doing to each other. And then I look at a gold difference. That's basically a ratio of the unit's finishing health to its starting health multiplied by the gold it costs to put that unit on the field, and subtracted between the two units. So in this case, our gold ratio on the very first battle was minus 385 gold. That means we lost 385 gold approximately in that engagement, and we were losing it at a rate of 263 gold per minute. Now this gold ratio is something I have added recently just to look at the amount of gold I had to spend to make this gold back. It's not really relevant for the purposes of this testing, but it is relevant for the purposes of other testing when you're looking at very disparate unit. And we lost every one of those battles. So on average, we lost 437 gold in that engagement, and the battle was over in 95 seconds. And I'm always trying to put a date on here as well, so that if you go back and you look at this in a year, you know, maybe Slayers have changed, maybe they haven't, but really that is a crushing loss. That's a Dwarf Warrior that you lose in, you know, 95 seconds. So obviously we don't want that, but I wanted to be able to compare this to our Dragonback Slayers and our Giant Slayers. So let's go back and we're going to grab our Dragonback Slayers. And our Dragonback Slayers have two key differences in that they have a lot more melee defense and they have this physical resistance of 20%. And obviously they do have the power of the Dragonback, which is when they hit something, they make it weak to fire and they slow it down. And actually one of the other big things they have, which I've already done a little bit of testing on this. I was late one night and I wanted to do it, but this charge defense against larges can be pretty massive, but none of the other Slayers have that. So let's go take a look and see how our Dragonback Slayers do. They were the most tanky version against Kholek, and we will see how they do against these Chaos Warriors with great weapons. And Dragonback, like, one of the things that I'm seeing in some, like, you know, I test lots of little single tests and stuff. One of the things that I'm seeing in my testing is really, I feel like the Slayers are in a nice place right now. They're in a very good differential in that your Dragonback Slayers are still an amazing unit. Your regular Slayers are actually still a pretty good value. And your Giant Slayers are amazing, but they're very vulnerable. So you can see, you know, we're kind of pushing along about even kills. The Chaos Warriors are winning, but not by a massive amount, and this battle is going obviously much slower already than the first battle against the Slayer. So your Dragonback Slayers, if you have to, any Slayers you can actually push in because they will fight to the death to hold up another unit, but they're lasting much longer than our regular Slayers. And we'll go and take a look at the data that I took down to see. So they lost this fight, but they do actually win some against these Chaos Warriors with great weapons. So we'll end that battle and head over to the spreadsheet. So when we look at the Dragonback Slayers, they won 2 out of 7, so 30% of the time. The battles lasted much longer, 164 seconds as opposed to 95 seconds. So that's a big difference. You know, your Dragonback Slayers, if you need to sacrifice them, they will sell their lives very dearly. They will last quite a long time in plugging up a hole if you absolutely need them to do so. They are very good at that because they'll fight to the death. And they won a couple of times, which is actually pretty significant, even though they still lost total gold. Now, our regular Slayers lost 437 gold, and our Dragonback Slayers lost 339. But the difference when it comes to that amount of time it took, our regular Slayers were losing at 280 per minute, where our Dragonback Slayers were 128 per minute. So a pretty big difference in the overall performance of these two units, that even though it costs 1150, it is better in this situation and loses less gold in that scenario. So we'll head over to look at our Dragonback Slayers. And I've done actually more testing. I've done quite a bit of testing on this because sometimes I just sit up late at night and I run units into units, and I know I should record it, but I haven't in this case. But it's interesting, you know, these guys do have armor piercing and they have 50 melee attack, you know, and in their weapon strength that's 33 armor piercing. Now they have a massive bonus versus large. Really, this is what they're meant for, large things. But how will they do against Chaos Warriors with great weapons? If you have to throw them into the line to support, can it be done reasonably well, reliably? Is it worth it to do so? That's sort of what I wanted to find out in this infantry engagement. So let's get our Dragonback Slayers. Whoops. Come on, boys. And we'll get them to go in the fight, and we'll get a little cinematic just because these Dragonback Slayers are completely awesome. And we saw one of our Dragonback Slayers lost his head on the initial charge, but they're going to bring the fight to these Chaos Warriors with great weapons. And you can see it is pretty even. I think the Chaos Warriors with great weapons, you know, obviously they're they're going to do a lot of damage because they have no armor and they are fairly vulnerable. But I'll just fast forward that so we can get to the end of the battle. And you can see they're winning slightly. Both units actually think they're winning this, but yeah, they're gonna take those Chaos Warriors and send them packing, which is actually really interesting. It's something that I would have expected based on what I knew before they were released. Is that really that armor piercing is a really big deal, especially when a unit has 100 armor. So we'll go and take a look at the data and see how they did. Now they can definitely beat them, but what does that gold exchange look like? Well, they actually didn't beat them every time. They beat them 6 out of 7 or 86% of the time, but they still lost quite a bit of gold, 208. So you definitely don't want to put them up against any kind of infantry. Not any kind of, you just don't want to put them up against infantry. In any case, they're still going to lose gold, but they can do a lot of damage. So they won 6 out of 7, and they did it in 96 seconds. So as fast as our regular Slayers lost, our Giant Slayers won. And they finished with about 21% of the hit points, so they could still go in and do some fighting after that. And you can see the DPS is about the same between the regular Slayers, the Dragonback Slayers, and that big reduction of DPS for the Chaos Warriors with great weapons. They went from 68 to 39 against the Dragonback Slayers, so that's really that physical resistance and all that melee defense, and then went back up to 54 against our Giant Slayers. And our Giant Slayers did 67. Like they just do so much damage so fast. They're such a wonderful unit. So I guess obviously the data confirms what most of you already knew and what I already knew as well, is that even the Giant Slayers you don't want to put into melee combat. But I was just curious at how much that was actually worth, what these units would perform like in that situation. And I'm going to continue to do some testing obviously with the Giant Slayers and keep looking at them as a unit, because they're just such a great addition to the Dowie roster, and they're so, they're just so cool. But when you look at actually how the stats roll out, I mean, it's everything you would expect. These guys, they don't have any missile resistance, they have no armor, they have no special resistance except for that magic resistance for our Giant Slayers. Pretty much the same as our regular Slayers, but they do have that shield. And our Dragonback Slayers are very tanky with that 44 melee defense, charge defense against large, and the 20% physical resistance. And of course they do have the power of the Dragonback. So you always have a choice here. Like, regular Slayers are still pretty darn good. They can pull a ton of value even at 900. But you really have to be a lot more careful with them. And I would say that actually holds true for the Giant Slayers too. Like, really, these two units you do have to be quite careful with. Not to say you don't have to be careful with your Dragonback Slayers, but as tanky as they are and for what they do, they're a lot more durable and can do more things out on the battlefield for you. So anyways, love to hear some comments. I love comments. What do you think? Have you been using the Giant Slayers in your battles, or either online or in campaign? How have you found them? What have you found their best uses for? And, these types of things. Just would love to hear from you, and love to hear from any other testing you would like to see. Of course, I love my comment section. That's just one of my favorite things. And even if you just say hi, I mean, I don't care. I really do enjoy going through the comments on these videos, and I get a lot of very interesting insights and information, great testing ideas, and just a great chance to say, hey, how's it going? Cheers, everything like that. So definitely want to hear from you down below in the comments. Hope you found that testing interesting, and I will see you soon.